home parks, but
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. So everybody has some type of real estate experience already, right?
We've got five rentals up in the Seattle Tacoma market.
Okay.
And all are, I think they're all multifamily, I guess, so to speak, but I'm doing a couple single family homes that I'm renting by the bedroom.
Also in the same area?
Sorry?
Also in the same area, Tacoma?
Yeah, we got a condo in Seattle, and then the balance of it's in Tacoma. We just purchased a commercial triplex in a gentrifying area of Tacoma called the Hilltop.
Okay.
And used to be a pretty rundown, gang infested community.
Oh wow. Okay.
But now it's changed for the better, putting in a light rail line. So we bought a kind of it was actually boarded up. I mean, it was a boarded up triplex, unoccupied. And I think we got a good deal on it. And so we're changing the use though. And that's been a real pain in the neck because we're having to put sprinklers in it, fire protection, monitoring, and, you know, all the modern stuff. Whenever you change use of a building, they make you bring it up to the current code. So insulation and ventilation and, you know, so, but it's got good bones. It's a brick building. And
well, I mean, if you can pull off the zone change, that's usually that increase the value a whole bunch, right?
Yeah. So I'm going to rent that by the bedroom as well. 5-bedroom residence. It's got a retail storefront. We'll rent that out to a pack and ship or a nail salon or something. And then it's got a 2,400 square foot basement. We haven't figured out what we're going to do with that yet, but it'll cash flow just based on the residents.
Oh, that's awesome. Hello, Joe. So that's the thing, because you know, California real estate is so expensive, right? I mean, it doesn't matter what you buy, you're not gonna get any meaningful return, right? But a lot of people, you know, they still, I know a lot of people that still have this mentality. They say, oh, I want to be able to invest something where it's in 30 minutes drive, but there's really nothing much you can do. I mean, you're not gonna get any return. A lot of people don't. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. It's all ego. Yes, you can drive by your building and go, "That's my building," but you get no cap rate, nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
Like sometimes even let's say if somebody invests something that's like an hour, 2 hours away, you drive there. I mean, but in most part of the country, like for example, Kevin, you fly to Tacoma, is like what, 1 hour, right? 2 hours the most. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about 2 3/4 hours. But you know, it's unless you hire a professional management company, and those are liable to nickel and dime you a lot. You got to be careful there, I found. So it's close enough that I can fly to it, and I got family in town, so I can stay there free, and that's a big plus. But if I had no other business up there, I would have to have a manager, and management up in the Tacoma, Seattle area, they take your first month's rent for placing a tenant. So that's gone. And then they take 9 or 10%. And so compared to like LA, it's 4 or 5%, and they don't take the first month's deposit or first month's rent.
That's really, really expensive.
And so it's a completely different expense situation up there.
How are you managing it right now?
So in one of my rentals, in one of the rentals that I rent by the bedroom, I have a responsible couple that I give a pretty heavy break to, and they're responsible for maintaining, you know, order amongst tenants that are in disputes, and then they help post any late notices, and then they also pretty handy. So, you know, yesterday somebody tagged one of my buildings, and so they were over there painting it and, you know, sent me photos. They just take care of it. But and he's pretty handy with electrical, and so that's been a pretty good blessing to have them.
That's a great way to go. That's actually what most mobile home park owners do as well. So usually, whoever when they buy a new park, they just you know, find out who has the most beautiful home. Then they go talk to them. Hey, do you want to be the manager? If they say yes, then they say, hey, how about this? You help me to, you know, look out for my property, and I'll give you a free rent. Something like that. Yeah. Okay.
I've been intrigued about mobile home parks for quite some time, because there were some selling in the Tacoma Puyallup area, like in 2011, 2012, and they were pulling, you know, 13% cap rate then, even during a downturn, you know. And so I started looking at them, but I don't own one, but I'm very intrigued by it. And that's why I joined the call today.
Yeah, so that's what's unique about mobile home parks, because the expense ratio is so much lower. The general consensus is if you own like a, for example, multifamily, if you want to be conservative, you probably want to allocate maybe 40 to 50% as the expenses, right? I mean, that's what the general, I mean, if you manage yourself, maybe you get it done much cheaper. But for mobile home parks, usually the general consensus is that the average expenses is like 30%. If you manage it, yourself, it could probably even be 20%. And just for comparison, like a general expenses for a hotel is like 70%. So, as with the comparison, you can see, the expense ratio for mobile home parks is much lower. So I guess we can get started. We have Kevin here, Rich here, Mira here, and Joe here. So first, what I'd like to do is get a little bit feedback on what are you guys most interested in finding out about mobile home park. That way I can, tailor the session toward what you guys wanted to find out more according to your, interest level and experience level. So if Kevin, you can start by what are you mostly interested in finding out about mobile home park?
Sorry, was that a question to me?
Yes, to you or anybody. You can share with me what you're most interested in.
Somebody needs to.
Hold on, let me see if I can. Let me see if I can. Hello, is it better? Okay, so basically,
everybody needs to mute except for maybe the person speaking.
Okay, so I wanted to get a short feedback on what are you guys most interested in knowing and to find out about mobile home park. That way I can tailor the session according to what your interests are.
If I can jump in really quick. So I probably have a number of questions. I haven't really prepared in advance, but I'm really curious, like the common expenses that you're covering, such as water, sewer, garbage, maintenance, stuff like that. Like how much does that add up, per unit or per stall? Do you metric it by space rented? Call them spaces or stalls for a mobile home. Really curious about methods to search them out and find
deals,
available listings.
Okay.
I'm in the title insurance business, so I have tools to help people with that. But I'm just not sure, like, if you trust one broker to hunt around the country for them for you.
Okay. The trust issue. Okay.
So yeah, just typical expenses. How do you find them? And then also, have you syndicated a deal or done a joint venture with other partners, and maybe what that looks like?
Okay. Syndicate. How syndicate work? Okay. All right. That's all you have.
That's all I got on my mind right now.
Okay, so we'll jump to Rich. Rich, if you can share with us what you're mostly interested in finding out. I think you need to turn on your mic too. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Thought of the specifics either, but obviously finding them, how to find them, how to evaluate them. So, is it a good deal?
Okay.
I know there's a difference between like mobile home and RV. RV is more of a daily thing, where mobile homes are more of a long-term thing. And within mobile homes, I know that you can own them as there's a whole, you can own them as the park and rent them out, or you can rent them, have people who own them bring them in, which to my mind is the better model. But so that's probably all I can think of right now. But
basically, you're talking about the difference between tenant-owned homes versus park-owned homes, right?
Right.
Okay. Versus park-owned homes. Okay. How about Mira? Mira and Joe, do you guys have some feedback on what you want to mostly interested in finding out?
This is Joe. I'm mostly interested in the syndicate, how the the venture works with the partners. That's the information I'm interested in. I haven't done anything like this before. It's always been full ownership for me in rental properties.
Okay. So you are interested in maybe exploring about the syndication.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
That's all.
Okay. So we'll go to Mira. Okay, Mira, do you have any feedback?
No, I just want to learn something new.
Okay, something new.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so seems like a lot of people, most of you guys are interested on how to find out how to get the deals. Let me see if I can get to that slide. So about finding the deals, how we did it, it's we just call around the country. We just call the owners directly. As you know, if you like, there's a lot of deals on the market, but usually the deals that's on the market is probably not as a good deal. So if the best way to find a deal, there's many ways different people do it. One most simplest way is to call the owners directly, because the good thing about mobile home parks is it's still a pretty scattered business. There's still most of the mobile home parks, they're still owned by mom and pops. So if you see here who is investing in mobile home parks, these are some of the biggest investors in the nation. They own like tens of thousands, hundreds of tens of thousands of units. But these bigger companies, they're mostly interested in bigger parks, like for example, 50 plus or maybe minimum 100 unit plus. So other than those categories, there's still a whole bunch of parks, smaller parks, like maybe anywhere from 10 units to 20 units, 30 units, 40 units, 50 units, 60 units. So those smaller units, the big companies, they're not really interested in them. But for individual investor or smaller investment companies, it's still a pretty good deal. So usually for me personally, I usually look for minimum 30 units. I mean, up to our units, number of units we can get. So we just call the owners. Here's how we do it. We call the owners. We ask them if they want to sell. Once they say they want to sell, then we fly there. We negotiate with them, and we open escrow. There's some other method people use to get seller information, like what Kevin was saying about, if you have title information, maybe you can, mail them, you can send them postcards, or you can send them letters, or also online. But what I find is that most of these parks, they're owned by mom and pops. So the most efficient way is probably either phone call or mailing, because sometimes they're probably not very active on the internet. Yeah, so we have been finding success through just cold call. We just call them directly. And for example, when you cold call, you can potentially get a better deal. For example, let's say if you're gonna look for a park on the internet that's listed somewhere, the cap rate you're getting is probably not gonna be really high. And sometimes if it shows high cap rate, it's probably gonna be some type of a pro forma. Like I made an offer on this park in somewhere in Midwest, I forgot the city. The price is cheap. It's like under $20,000 per unit, but it needs a lot of work because like 70% of the park is empty. So that's why I didn't. So I was negotiating with them on the price, but I wasn't really anxious to buy it because it requires a lot of work. There's a lot of empty spaces. Like I said earlier, the easiest way, just go ahead. Yeah, Kevin.
When you're looking at a prospective park,
Yeah.
do you do a real deep dive, like call the city or municipality to find out if there's any violations or sewer issues or water issues, and I'm curious how many of these parks are on septic versus sewer?
So that is the same. Because I guess for most investors, I mean, I'm just going to talk from my perspective. What I'm mostly interested in is how good the deal is, right? It's like if I buy it, like how many multiples is it? What kind of cap rate is it? What kind of cash on cash return is it? So I'm gonna, that's my focus initially. As far as the utility, as long as not something like a completely like a funky. What I mean is that, for example, if the septic system is a packaging plant, I'm probably not gonna touch it, because that's that requires some people with specialty to be able to deal with those kind of a unique sewer system. But other than that, I would say the majority of the mobile home parks are either a combination of well water and the septic, or city water and septic, or well water and the city sewer. Obviously, if you can get something that's city water, city sewer, that would be perfect. But I'm thinking if you get something like that, you're gonna pay the premium for it. Because I mean, ideally, that's what everybody wants to look for. Because most investors, they have this perception, if it's well water and if it's septic, there is extra work, or there are potential hazards, which is true. Before I tried to buy a park in Yuma, Arizona, this park was cheap. It was 50 units. So we agreed on a price for 900, somewhere around 900,000. The reason I say it's cheap is because I did some digging. I was looking at how much some of the parks were selling nearby. There was one park, it was only like 30 some units. It sold for like 2.5 million, like $2 to $3 million. So it's like, I was like, wow, this is a super deal. But every time when you purchase a park, the most important item the due diligence you need to perform is the environmental. So we did an environmental inspection, the phase 1, and didn't pass. So the reason it didn't pass phase 1 is because there was a water contamination. So the park was located near farmland. So I'm just assuming, I was just kind of thinking where the contamination came from. They were saying like the water table was high. So I'm thinking maybe the contamination maybe from pesticide in the farm, whatever, But anyway, to make a long story short, the water well is contaminated. So that's why it didn't pass the environmental inspection. And also it has a whole bunch of violation with the EPA, like the government, environmental agency. I didn't buy it. So, because usually what they say is if it doesn't pass phase 1, you don't even need to bother, because it's very expensive to mitigate any type of environmental problem. So a couple of months later, because I did go to the park, I visited the park and I talked to some of the tenants, and I gave my phone number to some of the tenants, because at the time I thought I was going to own it, right? So a couple of months later, a tenant called me. She said she was complaining. She was like, oh, the park was horrible. And she said, oh, by the way, we have a couple of tenants died. So I was thinking maybe probably I mean, it's bad that I'm laughing. I didn't mean to, but it's probably from the contamination. So that's a huge legal risk, right? So let's say if some attorney find out, they could get the tenants to go on a class action lawsuit and just sue the heck out of the owner. So yeah, so to answer,
the bank probably wouldn't want to own on any. They wouldn't want to loan on anything like
that. Yeah, correct. Yeah, so if it's if it has a phase 1 problem, and if it's not mitigated, the bank will not finance it. That's for sure.
So you were out of pocket $10,000 for an environmental study, or what are those costs?
The environmental study, it's depending on where you are in the country, I think it's not that much. It's somewhere like the most I've paid, I think, is like around 5,000, 4,000, 5,000. If you can get it cheap, maybe I don't know, 2,000 or 3,000. But what I find is that there's number one, there's not many environmental companies. Number two, it's I guess there's a lot of transaction going on. So I mean, not just mobile home park, because those companies, they check all other type of commercial properties. So usually it's it takes time. So it takes at least 3 or 4 weeks to get the outcome. So a lot of times I was kind of trying to balance the timing for the environmental inspection, because on the one hand, I want to know at least with 80% certainty that I'm going to go through with the purchase. But on the other hand, I don't want to waste the money on the environmental report. You know what I mean? Because if I buy the park and if I don't go through with it, if I cancel, then if I did the environmental report, that means the money is wasted. It's like for whatever 5,000, 4,000, that's gone. But on the other hand, I have to do it.
Yeah.
So that's something you have to.
I went to a conference Friday, BizNow, Orange County, all industrial apartment developers, and Bill Shopoff from Shopoff Realty Investments spoke, and he said, in Orange County, there's really no property left to buy that isn't contaminated. So when they buy something, they just go in knowing they're going to have a lot of costs and fees. He's got all of his environmental people on speed dial. I mean, if I bought something in Kentucky, I wouldn't know the first thing about trying to get it cleaned up. And so I imagine having a sufficiently long escrow period to do your studies is probably very important. I mean, what is the typical escrow that you find for a mobile home park? Do you ask for 90 days or?
Okay, so here's the thing. A lot of times, that's what's unique about mobile home parks, and it makes it both an advantage and a disadvantage. What I mean by that is that if you're gonna buy the park from a corporate or from somebody that's a flipper, obviously you're not gonna get a good deal, right? So the only way you're gonna get a good deal if you're buying from the original owner. But if you're buying from the original owner, if you try to conduct business as business usual, the likelihood of you getting the deal is very low. What I mean by that, I'll just give you an example. So the park I bought in nearby Panama City, Florida, I got the park really cheap. It was 37 units. I got it for $600,000. And the reason I got it, the reason they agreed to sell to me, is because whatever they say, I would just say yes, man. Whatever they say, I say yes. And they say, we don't want to do the inspection period. Okay, I said yes. Okay, that's okay. They said we don't want any contingency. I said okay, that's okay. I'll agree to it.
No contingencies at all.
Yeah. So here's my mentality. I was thinking to myself, as long as I get the deal I want, and as long as I know I have time to transact, so at least I can agree to it, so I can get the deal, and I can still do due diligence on my own, at my own risk. You know what I mean? Because they said they don't want due diligence, but I can still do it. It's just that if it doesn't work out, I just lose my deposit, right?
You lose your earnest money?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That in my mind, that's just the risk I'm wanting to take to get that good deal, right?
Yeah.
But at the time when I was buying it, the seller told me, which I believe, because the price I got it was really cheap. So the seller told me, hey, you know what? At the time you were buying it, there's another guy that tried to pay me $850. I didn't sell to them, because those people, they're like all acting like a corporate guys, right? They're like, oh, we want to do this. We want to do this by the book. We want how many days inspection. We want to They wanted all those stuff. But to those mom and pops, they don't care about that,
Right. Yeah.
They just wanted,
keep it simple. Yeah, like handshake almost, right?
Yeah, go ahead. Rich, you had a question?
Do you go in with cash, or do you finance these? The banks like these things.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. So Kevin, did you have another question too?
Oh no, I'm curious about the financing as well.
So that's the same. So another reason I got the deal, remember what I said? Just do whatever they tell you. They said they want cash. I said, okay, cash, no problem. So, but at the time I didn't have cash. So, but I have equity. So I went ahead and did a refinance on my house. But the problem is it wasn't quick enough. So we were like 3 or 4 weeks into it, and they got impatient, the seller. So they were saying, hey, you know, when are you gonna close this? We really want to close this deal. You know, we have another buyer, they want to pay us $850,000. If you're not gonna close the deal, we're gonna sell to them, something like that. So I'm like, okay, I'll close next week. So what I did is, because initially I was waiting for the refinance from my house, but obviously they want to close quicker, because initially they sold it to me, agreed to sell to me because I agreed to buy it from them for cash, right? And now they want to close quicker. So what I did is I went ahead, I got a bridge loan. So I got a bridge loan, because the bridge loan you get the money quickly. So I got it like in a couple of days. Then I went ahead and paid the cash for the purchase, closed the, you know, exchange title, and then I refinanced. Once the money from my refinance of my house came out, so I just paid off the bridge loan.
You get like a 1 or 2 year bridge loan at like 7 or 8% or something, kind of higher interest, and then
yeah. So here's what's going on with the bridge loan. So with the bridge loan, if you had no prior, if you have not done prior business with the lender, everything's gonna be more expensive. For example, let's say if it's the first time doing business with them, they're gonna charge you 10% interest. They're gonna charge you, you know, 1% fee or 2% fee, whatever. But as soon as you finish the first deal, the next deal you get, the interest suddenly drop from 10% to 5%. So, you know, it's about a relationship. So if they trust you, they think you know you're somebody that's trustworthy, then they're gonna the cost is gonna be much lower when the second time, you know, when it comes around the second time. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard relationships matter in that arena.
Yeah, with the bank, correct. Yeah.
But you still had to come up with maybe 10 or 15% for the bridge loan too, right? They're not going to give you 100%.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So what I did is what I did is I gave them $300,000 first. $300,000. Yeah. Then because initially I was waiting for the rest of the money from the refinance from my house, but it didn't come in quick enough. So I went ahead, got a bridge loan to pay them off. Then yeah.
So you came up with a full 300 grand to pay for, and then got like 50% and a bridge loan.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Cash them out and then wait for that refi to come through.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I call that a good hustle. You know, you're making it happen.
I mean, it's expensive. Obviously, the what I pay for the bridge loan and the refinance is expensive. But I have a big enough spread between the interest I pay for the loan versus the cap rate I'm getting, because the park is it's a 37 unit total. It's 27 unit occupied. So at the time I bought it, I was getting like around $9,000 a month. So even at the time of purchase, with the purchase price and the income I'm getting like a 13% cap rate, 13%. So nice. once I fill up the 10 spot, the 10 empty spaces, I think I can get my cap rate up to 20 to 25%.
Nice.
When did you buy this?
Half a year ago. Like so that's a big spread, you know, because I already paid off the bridge loan. The bridge loan is 10%. If I hadn't paid that off, then the spread is only 3% at the current cap rate. But I already paid that off. So my refinance for my house is the interest rate is 5%. So right now at this point I have 8% spread.
Nice.
Between the interest rate and the cap rate.
And you got a lot of vacancy still that you can fill. Have you thought about buying a trailer and parking it and just renting it out, or you don't want to get involved in that?
No, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm gonna do. So so here's the reason I haven't done it yet is because the park I bought it from, they're the original owner, literally. Even the name of the park is the name of the seller. That's how you know when it's a good deal, because it's a first-hand seller. It's like they've been living there like for hundreds of years. You know? So there's another park I found, but they don't want to sell it yet. It's also the same thing. When you see the name of the street and the name of the park, and the name of the owner is the same name, then you know it's gonna be a good deal because it's gonna be a first hand, you know, original seller. So that's how you know it's gonna be a good deal. I mean, potentially a good deal.
Did you ever hear why they wanted to sell? Did they ever discuss why they wanted to get out of the business? I'm curious what sours people to the business.
Okay, I mean, when we talk about it, it sounds like we're bad people, but that's just the nature of life, right? People, things happen, right? You know, people getting divorced. I mean, trust me, I met all different kind of people that had with all different type of reasons. People getting divorced, people like a partner's like a spouse passed away, people got sick, people got tired of the business. It's mostly those reasons. So I mean, when you have those reasons, I mean, if it's tragic, it's not unfortunate, but that's when you can get a good deal. It's like, for example, the one I bought, it's the same thing. Like they're getting older, they want to retire, you know, they have some type of, you know, medical issues as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would imagine, you know, looking Ray, do you have any other rental properties, or is this like your first?
Yeah,
just dove into it.
So I'll share with you a little bit about my background. So I have a couple businesses. I have one business. I'm actually a real estate broker in Los Angeles area. So I represent mostly homeowners. So I have a little team. So I'll share with you how I transitioned into this park business. Okay. So for my brokerage business, I have 8 staff member. So the model for my brokerage business is the same model actually. For my brokerage business, I have cold callers. So they call every day. They call the homeowners. They call the homeowners. They book an appointment for me. I go meet with the homeowners. But when I go meet with the homeowners, I'm signing a marketing contract. After I sign a marketing contract, I make commission. So usually, you know, the commission I'm getting is I'm looking at anywhere that on average is from 20 grand to 50 grand, sometimes maybe 100 grand for each deal. So that means every time I go meet with the owner, I spend 2 hours. That's the money I'm looking to make. Because once I sign a contract, then I tell the owner, I say, hey, I have a team of professionals. So we're going to create a chat group with you. So whatever communication is going to be done in there. So I have people doing paperwork. I have people doing marketing. I have people doing different tasks. So that's for my brokerage business. So the reason I transitioned to mobile home park business is because this, by the way, this is the story I tell the owners too when I go talk with them, which is true. Because I'm 45, you know, I just recently got married. I got married late, 2 years ago. So the reason I thought about investing in mobile home park is because people kept telling me diapers are expensive. So I wanted to get a second source of income, revenue, right? So so for the mobile home park business, we're doing the same way. We call around the country. Once they want to sell, we go negotiate with them. Once we reach an agreement. So this time, instead of signing a marketing agreement, we're signing a purchase agreement. So instead of making a commission, I'm making equity. So for this Florida, because actually before I bought this one, I tried to buy a couple other ones, didn't work out. So for this one, which the projection, once we fill up the empty spaces, and once we increase the rent $20 per year, so I'm looking at least $1 million in equity capital gain. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I imagine the amount of rent you get per space is highly dependent on the market and the demographics. And
so here's what's great about mobile home park is that is pretty much the last option anyone has. What I mean by that is if they don't stay in the mobile home parks, they're gonna be on the street.
Yeah.
Because the majority of the renters in mobile home parks are mostly 2 categories. One big category is retired folks. Because in America, an average Social Security check is about $1,200. But nowadays, anywhere you go in the nation, rent is very high. Even if you go some like a really rural place, you're gonna pay you're looking to pay, you know, $600, $700, $800 for a single bedroom apartment.
Yeah, that's what I charge per bedroom. I charge $700 per bedroom.
Yeah. So just imagine if somebody that's a retired folks, you know, they have $1,200 check, they pay you $800 for your apartment. They cannot live on $400, right? So that's why a lot of retired folks, they're living in the mobile home parks, which is a good outcome. I mean, if I'm in that kind of situation, I would rather stay in a mobile home park because number one, I have more disposable income. Number two, is actually I can enjoy more privacy. Some people, you know, they have kind of negative connotation about mobile home parks, but some of the parks, I mean, they're not fancy or anything, but it's actually, the environment is nice. At least you get to enjoy nature, right? You have your little yard, you have some grass area, you know, you can have some pets. So, and you all to yourself, you don't have to deal with like the neighbor, like you know, banging on the wall or something like that. You know?
So Ray, in your parks, do you own most of the mobile homes, or do you have people bring them in, or both?
So that's a good question. So that's something you want to look at when you decide to buy it or not. So I'm making offers every day. We're calling owners every day. So for example, this one park, I was gonna buy it. The price looks okay, but the only problem I have is that the majority of the homes are park owned. That's what you do not want.
I'm sorry, what? You don't want what?
You do not want park owned homes.
You don't want park owned homes, right?
You don't.
Okay, want what?
Park owned homes. You do not own the homes. You want the tenant to own the homes.
The homeowner owns the home.
Yes, you want the tenant to own the homes. You do not want to own the homes.
Right, because then they can't move I mean, they can't skip out. I mean, because they own the home, it's theirs, and it's probably pretty expensive to move it, I would assume.
Yes.
So,
right now in the nation, it's about $5,000 to move a single wide mobile home. It's about $10,000 to move a double wide mobile homes within 50 miles radius.
So if somebody abandons their home, that's a lot more than an eviction.
Yeah, exactly. So the reason you don't want to own the home is because number one, if you own the home, then you got to repair the home, right? So if you as the park owner, if you own the home, it's almost like you're not owning a mobile home park, you're owning an apartment complex because you're you know, responsible to repair to do the repair. But the problem with the mobile home park is the rent is so low, you cannot afford to do the repair. You know what I mean? Because I mean, the national average is like $300 a month. If you do a repair, you get a handyman out there, they're gonna charge you $200 or $150. Then half of your rent is gone.
now there's another class, I guess, of mobile home parks. I was looking on LoopNet. You know, besides the mom and pop, not mom and pop, but besides the working class bread and butter ones, there's kind of like ones that are on the beach or in a beautiful spot. That's a whole different market, I would assume.
Yeah, that's a totally different animal. It's so I mean, it's good. I mean, because recently because we're continuing to call the owners every day. So we have one lead is like around 100 units in El Cajon in San Diego. I think the owner wants to sell for $10 million or something. So we're following up on that one. So here's the thing. If the park is really fancy, the banks is going to be willing to finance it. But the cap rate is not going to be as high because it takes a lot more expenses to maintain a fancy park.
Is it hard to get bank financing on these parks?
Here's the thing. There's yes and no. Okay, no, because the good thing about buying mobile home parks is that many of the owners are willing to finance. The reason owners are willing to finance is because if they, let's say, because, okay, I'll give you an example. So a couple, like last year, I tried to buy a park in nearby Houston. So the owner, so I found that park through calling too. So the owner, he's an airplane pilot and he used to live in California. So he moved to Houston area. So we kind of hit it off pretty good because we had similar experience. So we were both infantry in the Army and we were both M60 machine gunner in the Army. So we kind of hit it off. We have a lot of commonality in common, right? So I went to look at his park nearby Houston. Sorry, what was the question again? I have short-term memory.
Bank financing, like
okay.
how much, what's
Yeah,
the typical equity that you have to put in on a
Correct,
typical deal?
financing. Yeah, so we hit it off, and I went to look at his park, and he agreed to finance me. The reason he agreed to finance me is because if he sell me the park, because most of these people that's getting ready to retire, if they do not exchange, they gotta pay a big capital gain.
Yeah.
Right. So the only way for them to avoid the capital gain tax is through exchange. But if they do not exchange, another option for them is seller financing. Because if they seller finance, for that one, I was gonna pay $300,000 down, and that one is $750,000. For that one, I was going to pay $300,000 down, and he was going to finance me $450,000. So in that situation, he would only have to pay the capital gain for the down payment I paid.
Right, right.
But I have a question. If someone's sophisticated enough to be thinking about capital gains and all that kind of stuff, aren't they going to at least like check out the value of their park before they sell it?
Oh yeah, they do. I mean, nobody's stupid, right? So,
No.
but the thing, what I find is that for this, like mom and pop sellers, they want to get more money, yes, but they are more, they care about relationship more than the money. That's the way to put it, I think.
Sure.
Yeah. Versus somebody that's a flipper, you know, they don't care about they like you or not. They just want to get the biggest number. That's why when you try to buy this kind of mobile home parks, it's very good idea to fly down there to meet with some person in person and establish a relationship. That's what I did. So yeah.
So I have two questions.
Yes.
So my first question is how does a little guy like me compete with an organization like yours and other people out there who have people calling banks? You know, you're calling 50 people a day. You know, I mean, how? So that's my first question. Like,
so that's what I said. You could start from smaller parks because the big corporations, they don't want the small parks.
No, but you've got 8 people or whatever calling all the time. I mean, you know, it seems like there would be other people doing things like that too. It's a good idea.
Well,
I mean,
yeah, it's like anything else. It's just like whether you're wanting to put in the hustle or not. You know,
right.
But you may.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Everybody have different personality, right? Maybe some people they don't like to call. Some people they don't like to mail. You can pick something that you enjoy doing. For example, that's you say, oh, I don't want to call. I just want to mail people. Just do that. You don't have to force yourself to do something you don't like to do.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
And my other question is this. So you, by giving, you know, by starting this meetup and doing this, what are you looking for? Are you looking for people are you just want to teach it? Or are you looking for people to invest? Are you looking for people to do it with? Or
yeah, that could be the option. So here, because my goal is to continue to purchase park, but eventually my money is going to run out, right? So
hopefully not.
Yeah. So a lot of times it's actually very widely, you know, accepted practice. A lot of people do syndication. So that's a good way for people to put expertise and money together to, you know, invest in, you know, properties, real estate.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think I missed a lot of that. Ray, you're teaching the class so you can get maybe a brokerage involvement, or what's the benefit to you?
The benefit to me is, number one, I can meet other investors. Number two, I can meet other investors that may be interested in partnership, like syndication, whatever.
Okay. Yeah. Right now I'm refinancing a couple properties and pulling cash out before rates, you know, go much higher. And so I'm frantically trying to wrap that up. At the same time, we're looking at trying to buy a house here in California because we're living in an apartment.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, I got half my friends are like, no, don't buy now. It's going to crash. And the other half are, no, there's no inventory and it's a supply and demand economy. It's just going to go higher. And so it's really hard to decide what to do, you know, for your own personhood if you don't have a home here, because it's terribly expensive. But I need a garage and I need space. And so I think we're going to do it anyway.
Here's my take on it, which I think the decision you just made is good. Here's my take on this. I know a lot of people have this kind of dilemma. Here's the thing. There is the money aspect of it. Then there's the enjoyment aspect of it. If you're buying your own home, if you're enjoying it, and as a return, it's going to improve your productivity and improve your quality of life, then you should do it. because
Yeah.
you know you're not trying to see how much money how much capital return I'm gonna get out of this, because if you enjoy the space, then you're gonna be more productive. You're gonna make much more money.
Yeah, quality of life.
Yeah, and also you don't have to just look into a single family. There is a way to eat the cake, to have the icing on the cake. What it is that what you can do, you can potentially buy a home with a bigger lot and build ADU.
ADU, yeah.
Yeah. So if
Yeah.
you do that, you're gonna make money and enjoy it.
Yeah, one of my clients right now is doing a lot of that. He's
Yeah.
buying large lots and putting in ADUs.
If you can put that off, you're gonna make money for sure.
So I have a question. Maybe you haven't experienced this, but I could see this happening in a more value play oriented, lower cost mobile home park. I mean, don't take offense here, right? But I feel like a lot of people that are living in mobile home parks are people without options. Maybe some people have criminal background, can't rent a place, but they had enough money to buy a trailer, or they're renting a trailer from somebody else and it's cheap and that's why they're doing it. Has there been a problem with criminal element in any of the parks you're familiar with? Is that something that you just have to get around?
To answer your question, it's a twofold. Okay, twofold answer. Number one, you do want to eliminate the bad apples. Number one, you do not want them. Okay, there are people that wants to get better. There's people that do not want to get better. So for the people that do not want to get better, you do not welcome them. Number two, like you're saying, either the people that's living in the mobile home parks, either because they're lower economic scale, or they're going through some type of obstacles in life. As long as they are looking to get better, that's the people you want. You just don't want any like criminals or whatever. You don't want those kind of people. As you know, I mean, it doesn't. I mean, everybody go through up and down, right? Up and downs. So I'll give you example. Like some of the people. Yeah.
Your own tenants? Do you have a screening service, or you are an active landlord, or do you just trust a management company to handle all that?
So the way I'm managing right now is so here's how most parks are managed. Here's an efficient way to manage a park. Okay. So usually when you manage a park, the reason is there's so many companies that owns hundreds, thousands of units, is because it's very scalable. That's what's great about the park management, owning the parks. Essentially, to manage it, you just need somebody in the background, and then you need somebody on the ground. That's all you need. And that's why it's so scalable. Like, for example, I hired a CPA. So every month she just, make sure everybody paid rent. And then we have somebody on the ground. You just need one person on the ground in the park.
Somebody handy.
Yeah, that's it. So
everybody has their own electrical meter. You supply water, sewer, and trash, I would assume.
Yeah, so the electric is their own. They have their own account. The trash, they have their own account. So the only thing I supply is well water. The well water. We have a couple wells. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So and that doesn't cost much at all, except for occasional pump or something.
Yeah. So the only cost for the well is you got to connect an electric meter to the well. So it's I think it's like it's very cheap. It's minimum like $30, $40 per well, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you probably do periodic water testing on the well to make sure it's.
Yeah, that's something you need to do. You test the water 3 times. Every 3 months.
And then you're like, I've had some septic problems at one of my rentals. Some people are just addicted to toilet paper or something, and it's, I got to go out there and unclog the lines.
For septic, you want to have you want to put that in the regulation and the system. You want to make sure that they follow the protocol. Do not throw like baby towel, whatever, those kind of stuff in there, and also do not use excessive cleaning materials like detergents. That's gonna mess up the balance. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What happens when somebody passes away and they don't have heirs and they leave their trailer behind? What do you do?
Well, if they leave the trailer behind, then it's on your property. If nobody claims it, then you can okay, there's two ways to sell the mobile home, right? One way to sell it just by the bill of sale. Another way to sell with title transfer. So if you do not have the title, you can still sell it with a bill of sale. There's a couple ways to do it. So either you could sell to tenant that want to rent the space, or you could let's say if the home is really beat up, there are people out there, they call the mobile home park owners, they ask them, if you can give me the home, then I'll fix it, then I can turn around, sell other people to make a profit. I mean, to me, I don't mind. I mean, if it's a really bad condition home, I don't need to bother with the remodeling. I can just give it to him and he can remodel it, he can make his money, you know?
I would imagine that's in your covenants or condition restriction, like people must have a standard of care and upkeep on their home so that the park doesn't fall into a disarray.
Yeah. So you need to have some type of regulation. So here's the good thing about, so that's why we kind of stay from the states that's really bad for the landlords, like you know, especially California, New York, those kind of states, because you know here you cannot, it's literally impossible to kick out the tenants, but in those landlord friendly states, you know, you can have those regulation issued, and if they violate any of those regulations, you can kick them out.
So mobile homes are like personal property, right? They're not like real property. So is there a foreclosure or lien process of getting out a bad tenant who won't pay, and you lay claim to their personal property and go through some kind of a lien sale?
So the homes, so that if the home is owned by the tenant, then if they don't pay, then you know, either they move their home or they leave with, or if they get out of park and leave their home behind. So if they leave their home behind, then you can contact the, let's say if they finance the home purchase, then you can still continue to charge for the lot rent, and then you can bill to the lien holder. And sometimes the lien holder, if let's say if it's a cheap home, they owe you a whole bunch of rent, then they just, okay, I will just give you the home because you know the back rent is too high. Like that, yeah.
Are you currently looking at any deals to bring to investors or trying to assemble a small partnership at all?
Yeah, we have right now I'm looking at like 5 potential deals in the pipeline. Most of them are around 100 units. Whose microphone is
Rich, I think your mic might be feeding back or something.
Okay, all right. So okay. So what was the question? Sorry, I got it.
Well, I don't think I'm deep enough to like go in and go buy, you know, a $500,000 $1 million park.
Okay.
But I think for my first deal, I'd be willing to joint venture with somebody, you know, put in between $50,000 and $200,000 and come up with, I mean, that might be enough down to just buy a park, you know, 200,000 cash, you might be able to get financed. I don't know.
Yeah, pipeline. Okay, you're talking about pipeline. Yeah, so pipeline. So pipeline, we have a couple we're looking at right now. There's one in nearby Savannah, 70 units. Another one nearby South Carolina, also around, I think it's around 100 units. There is one nearby Georgia that's like around 100 units. This parks I mentioned, I already went and met with the owner, but it just they are still not. They want to sell. They're thinking of sell. But they haven't put a trigger yet. So I'm planning to go there, go to the area, because those areas, they're all nearby, right? You know, the Georgia, South Carolina, Florida area, it's all within 2 to 3 hours driving distance. So I'm planning to go back there again and to visit all those owners again, and to see if we can tie up a deal, you know, sometime in the short future. Yeah.
Great. Well, please keep me on your list to contact for potential partnership.
Okay.
To review those deals if you're looking for that.
Okay.
If not, I'm very intrigued. So when I get some cash pulled out of these refis that I'm working on,
Yeah.
We'll probably try to get into an FHA minimum down loan on a house,
Okay.
and then I'll have cash left over and I think, honestly, I really would like to scale. I spent my whole life in single family and duplexes and a triplex, and honestly, it's, I think, as much work to rent out, a 3 or 4 bedroom house as it is to run a 10 to 20 unit apartment building. And I probably should have learned a lot earlier in life how to scale up to apartments, but I never did. And so this would probably be a great way to bypass maybe even an apartment and get a better cap rate.
Yeah, it's never too late, right? So here's, sometimes I tell people, I say, so the way to, like, it's kind of in response to your comment, a lot of people, they're like, oh, I want to be in California. Oh, I want to buy single family homes. Oh, this and all that. But all those stuff that they're doing is also exactly what everybody else is doing. That's why if what you're doing, if it's exactly what everybody else is doing, then obviously you're gonna get the same outcome. So the only way to get a different outcome is you do every step differently. So for example, if people find a deal online, we do not. We find a deal offline. So if people are buying in California, we do not. We buy out of state. So if people are buying single family homes, we do not. We buy something else, a different property type. So so the more you're doing differently compared to everybody else, the more potential higher return you're gonna get, because it's outside of box. The box is not the same thing everybody else is doing. So for example, just to continue on with the comment you just made, anything you buy, even out of state nowadays, if you're buying a home, it's gonna be overpriced. I mean, it's not overpriced, I take that back, but it's not gonna be cheap, right? So any unit you look at is at least I don't think you can. I mean, in some rural areas, you can maybe buy something for 100,000, but it's still kind of hard to find. But even nowadays, it's still possible to find a mobile home park with per unit cost between 10 to 20 grand. That's a really good return, considering the average rent in the nation is about $300 per spot. So if you talk about $300, that's $3,600 a year. So $3,600 a year. Let's just say $3,000. So let's say $3,000 divided by let's say $10,000. That's 30% return per unit. If you get the unit at $10,000 per unit, but obviously you're not gonna get it on the market. Anything on the market, you're not gonna get that price. And also depending on the geographic area. So if you're gonna buy, let's say, because a couple months ago I was looking at a park in Lakeland. That's between Florida. That's between Orlando and Tampa. They were asking for $70,000 per unit.
Deep.
But if you can get anything between 10 to 20 grand per unit, that's a really good deal. It's a very easy way to calculate. So let's say if you can get something for $20,000 per unit, and 5 or 10 years later, most likely you can sell it for at least $30,000 per unit. If you have 100 units, that's at least $1 million profit.
Hey, Ray, why not? I mean, I haven't explored it, but I've thought about it. My father was a developer up in the Tacoma, Seattle area when I was growing up, my stepfather, and he would go buy a tract of land.
Yeah.
And then I was a former surveyor, so I understood, the whole surveying thing. And he would hire some surveyors, they'd stake the lots, and then he'd take, like $1 million piece of land, and he'd sell those lots for, $100,000 a piece, and he'd triple his money or quadruple his money. Now it's much more difficult now to do land development than it used to. But, engineers are expensive, and now you have, like, any state with anything similar to CEQA, California, environmental thing that you got to get through. I don't even know what CEQA is, honestly. I just keep hearing developers talk about CEQA in California and how difficult it is to, any neighbor can come up with a protest and hold you back for a year, have hearings and all this other stuff. But I'm curious if you've ever considered just, a growing area where the population is kind of moving, and, you're going to go buy 10 to 15, 20 acres and do your own park. Have you thought about that? Okay, so that's a good topic to talk about. So if you look at this slide, so another reason is it's a pretty good investment type
is because it's the only property type that's diminishing, that's disappearing. There is not more and more of mobile home parks. There's less and less of mobile home parks. Here are some of the reasons. Number one, people are removing the park and and use the land to develop in something else. So, for example, there's actually is in the news too. A couple years ago, there was one park in Mountain View, nearby Google, all those big tech companies. The land there is so expensive, and city they don't like, because most city they don't like the parks because the tax revenue you get from the park is like very minimum. So they scratched that park, and I think the owner sold the park for land value for like $10 million or something. So another reason is cities they don't like it. For example, let's say if you have 10 acres, for a 10-acre mobile home park, the tax revenue a city can get is maybe like $5,000. But if you develop that 10-acre park into 100 homes, whatever, their tax revenue could be like $500,000. I don't know the exact number, but just in general. So and also it's kind of cost prohibitive to build a park. If it's in a more rural area, maybe possible. If you're close by to utilities, maybe possible. But if you're gonna buy a land, and if you're gonna build the entire infrastructure, for example, septic tanks, water pipe, whatever, it costs a lot of money. So we're still able to buy the parks at a relatively lower price. It's because those parks, many of those parks, they were built many years ago. So basically what I'm saying is that your acquisition cost is going to be probably in most cases lower than the building cost, construction cost.
Okay, so developing a park, there's not as much profit to be gained, but considering the engineering and construction of all the utilities and everything, entitlements, it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, but it's probably possible to build RV parks because RV parks has more revenue than mobile home parks. Because on average, nationwide, a mobile home park is probably you can probably collect $300 rent, right? But on RV parks, because it's like a sort of like a type of hotel. Let's say if you charge them $30 a night. Let's say if you get a 30 nights full, then that's almost $1,000. Yeah. I know this one guy. He bought a piece of land in somewhere nearby San Diego. I think nearby Vista, whatever location. So they're actually building the RV park over there.
Interesting. So I would assume the engineering and sewage and utilities wouldn't be a whole lot different for an RV park than they would be a mobile home park.
It's the same. It's the same. It's just the way the business is run, how the business run is different. Yeah, but the infrastructure is the same.
Yeah,
and the zoning is different. Another difference in the zoning. One is for zone for mobile home park, another one is zone for RV park. Yeah. So it's interesting. The questions you guys asked is really good. So pretty much is already covered in the what I was gonna say in the slides. So another thing is a high demand. So believe it or not, 28% of American family has an income of less than $25,000. So there's a high demand for low income rental. Right now 17 million people live in mobile home parks. Yeah, mobile homes. And every year more. See, this is the retirement check. The average retirement check income in 2019 was 1,270. 2020, 1,375. So yeah. Anything else you guys want to cover? Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I've looked into this a little bit on my own, and I think it's a great model. And so besides like telling us how good it is, which I believe, like and besides getting a list and cold calling, how do we get into this? I mean, I know we could partner potentially, but you have any other ideas for finding deals?
Okay, so we can go with that.
Yeah.
So we talk about calling, we talk about mailing, talk about partnering. Also, here's the thing. You can also ask the local realtors. You can also ask the local realtors to look for deals for you. Also social media, you can go ahead. Yeah.
So I have a great tool that I give to investors and brokers for free. It's anybody at a title company can provide this to you. So being that we have access to the title chain and all the property records, through the title companies, I have a website, and all I ask in return is just consider me if you do purchase something and we'd like to run the title and escrow on it.
Sure.
And we're competitive. Commonwealth is a national company. We're the first title company ever created in the United States. First company incorporated for title. So it's called Night Owl Pro. And so if you just go to the website, NITEOWLPRO, so Night Owl Pro, and it's NITEOWLPRO.com. And in the username, to set up a new account, you set up a new account by just using my first dot last name. So Kevin.Russell, 2 S's, 2 L's. You enter that into the username field and then leave the password blank. And that'll take you to a sign up page. You just, tell us who you are. You can say you're an investor or broker, and then you'll be granted access. And it's limited access. I mean, it's free. There's no charge to look up an address, a parcel number. So you could effectively study market trends or moving trends. You can even go to U-Haul, I think they publish them, but there's a lot of good YouTube videos on how the demographics are shifting in America, how a lot of people are moving to the Sunbelt states. And then you could use this Night Owl Pro to search the title chain for a filter. So what you do is you draw a radius on a map, and you have the system select nothing but trailer parks.
Okay.
And then it'll give you a list, and you can filter that list by owner name and address, tax statement mailing address, and it'll even print labels for you. Now it's 6 cents per lead usually when you run a farming report. By law in California, we're not allowed to charge for it. We're not allowed to give it free. We have to charge for it. Maybe in other states you might get it free, but I've been able to download Excel lists of these addresses at no cost.
Okay.
So explore the program, watch some of the videos on how to do a farming report, or maybe I don't know, you guys can reach out to me on LinkedIn or whatever and contact me. I'll do a training seminar with you, but it's a great tool because, you can use CoStar and you can use LoopNet and you can use Realtor.com. But to find an off-market deal, you're going to have to contact the owner. And the only way to contact that owner is to, either get in some county website and find out who pays the taxes, or use this tool, which is better because you can download the deed of trust and you can find out who signed for an LLC. And so that's why a title company is a better partner to help you find off-market deals like that.
Yeah.
And there's videos on the site that show you how to use the farming tools.
Do you know if there's a good way to find phone numbers for the owners?
If there's a better way?
A good way to find phone numbers?
If you don't have a membership at CoStar, which is quite expensive, I think my company pays over $500 a month for me to have a CoStar membership. CoStar is really good. If you're highly interested in one particular parcel, I'll search for free for you and just get you the information.
Okay.
But no, I don't know of a good, I've used, it's like like one of these sites you got to join for $9.95 a month. But one of them was actually pretty good, like peoplefinder.com or something. But it was not People Finder, it was another one. And I had to find somebody that hit me in an accident, and we knew their name, and then actually found them.
Oh, wow.
And they changed their phone, and it had their current address and phone and all that. So there's one or two of those out there in Google land that they're worth the $19.95 a month or whatever to get the right number.
Okay. So Rich, you were asking about how to get the deal. So what you're doing now is another way to get good deals. networking. So yeah. What else you guys want to talk about?
Well, I see your slide. I think, 30 minutes to an hour drive to an airport. I mean, I thought of, trailer parks not being all that convenient sometimes to airports, but.
So that's the same. Obviously, because when you're looking for a park, there are some metrics you want to be strict about, and there are some metrics you don't have to be so strict, because if you're too strict, then you're not gonna find anything, right? So it's a balance. So for me personally, this is just my personal preference, but this is just something for consideration for you. I'm not saying you want to invest according to this exact criteria. But for me, it's because although I don't have to go there every day, but if I do go there, I want to make sure the travel is not too much hassle. So that's why I say within 30 minutes to 1 hour drive. Yeah. So also another so what we're going out what we're going over right now is the macro selection process, the selection process. What I mean by macro is the higher level thinking on what area to purchase in the country. So number one is obviously your preference. Like Kevin, you were saying, oh, I invest in Tacoma because you have family there, right? So that's just personal preference. So you could take that into consideration. And also like we talked about earlier, the landlord friendly versus renter friendly states. So we try to we prefer just stick with the landlord friendly states.
Can I ask you a question here? If you rent to a person who owns their trailer, I mean, who owns their mobile home.
Yeah.
So you're not renting the mobile home, you're renting the space. Are you considered a landlord still, or are you considered
Yeah, you're still a landlord because you are leasing your land to their trailer. So generally the accepted practice in mobile home park business industry is that you do not want any lease. No yearly lease. You only want month-to-month lease. The reason being is if you have a yearly lease, you cannot kick them out. It's going to be hard to kick them out if they're distracted, if they're just destructive. So if you only have a month-to-month lease, then you can kick them out much easier. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
That's interesting. So you don't want to sign year-long leases.
No, you don't. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but in Florida, it's kind of tricky. In Florida, they actually do not allow you to do that. They do not. They demand you to have a yearly lease. So then what we did actually, we just have what we end up doing is that we just have no lease. Okay, so another criteria we look at is preferably 10,000, 100,000 plus population. Obviously if it's too rural, then you don't have too much demand. Another one we look at is you want to make sure the area rent is high. The reason being is, let's say if you're charging $300, if they can get any apartment at $400, $500, then you're in trouble. So that would not be a good situation, because that means they have a lot more alternatives. So another one you want to make sure is that the home price is at least $100,000 or more. Let's say if they can purchase a home for 50 grand, that's not good either, because then they don't need to live in your park, right? So there's a lot of substitute. Also, you want the crime rate, you want to not too high crime rate. And also another good way to look at it, whenever I look at a park, I always look at how close is the nearest Walmart. That's very important. Like for example, this one I bought in Florida, the Walmart is like 2 miles away. So the way I have it set up, I mean, there's different way to collect rent, but the way I've set up for this park, it's very simple. I'm not recommending you to do it this way for every park, but this is what I'm doing for this park, because it's just 2 miles away from Walmart, and across the street there's another bank from the Walmart. So basically, the way we have been collecting rent right now is every time when rents come due, they just go to Walmart, go get a cashier's check, then they go across to the bank and deposit the check into my LLC account.
Are you finding that many people with mobile homes are unbanked?
Yes, correct. That's why they are going to Walmart to buy the check, the cashier check.
Yeah, same with my tenants that are renting single family bedrooms. They typically are unbanked laborers.
Yeah.
A lot of them work, they just don't have bank accounts.
Yeah, so that's why the convenience is very important. So you don't want to be somebody leaving your park. They got to drive 10 miles to go get a cashier check. Then that's not going to work. So one of the, because the reason this is actually, when you look at Walmart, this is actually an easy way for you to weed out the bad, investment, because as long as it has a Walmart nearby, that means it's city enough. It's not too rural, right? It's, because the Walmart, they already made the selection for you, because they're building their store there for a reason. If there's not enough demand, they're not going to build a store there. And the following are some nice to haves. It's not must have. Like what we went down earlier is must have. Now it's nice to have. So Kevin, you mentioned about Sunbelt. So preferably you want to invest in the Sunbelt area. For obvious reasons, people like to stay in warmer climate. And also another big reason is that many of these mobile home parks, they have underground piping, the pipes. So in a colder climate, if nobody is managing the water pipe, for example, in the winter, in the colder areas, in the northern area of the country, the pipe needs to be wrapped. Either they need to be wrapped, either they need to be taped, or they need to you need to let the water flow run during the winter, because if it doesn't run, it's gonna freeze up. Once it freezes up, then it's gonna blow up the pipe. So this are the situation you don't need to worry about in Sunbelt states. And also obviously if it's in colder climate, you have another extra cost, which is to plow the snow. That's another extra cost. So this economic engine, this term is coined by Sam Zell. Sam Zell, he's a big investment guy. Like he sold the biggest office portfolio to Blackstone. So this is something he coined, which is called economic engine. Again, it's a nice to have. It's not a must have, because we're buying mobile home parks here. We're not trying to look for something that's perfect, but if the park you're buying happens to have this thing, it's definitely a plus. What's the economic engine? It's just basically major facilities that provide major employers. For example, universities, government facilities, major corporations. So for example, the park that I was going to buy in Yuma, there's a huge marine base nearby. So that's if you're buying some real estate nearby, economic engine is nice to have, but it's not a must. And obviously, if it has population growth, job growth, income growth, house value growth, rent growth, that's nice to have too. But for me, when I'm investing in mobile home parks, I don't really look at this. I mean, it's a nice to have. As long as the number makes sense, then then we're good. Okay, do you guys want to talk about evaluation process or no? Like how to calculate cap rate and stuff like that? Okay. So when we talk about, so this is basically DD, right? The due diligence. It's kind of in this order. So I want to make sure the zoning is correct. Environmental, utilities, financials, park on the homes, and also natural hazards. So zoning, that's the first thing I look at. So it's very easy. A lot of the government website, county website, they will have the information. You can search the address and you could find the zoning. So for the zoning, number one, you want to make sure it has the right permit. It has the mobile home park permits. Number two, you want to make sure, let's say if the owner told you it's 50 units, you want to make sure on the zoning it says 50 units, because the zoning, it will identify how many units they're allowed to operate. So a lot of times the owner, they're going to tell you, oh, right now we have 30 units, but you can increase to 50 units. Don't believe it, because it's not very easy to increase the unit count. So whatever the city zoning allow you to operate, that's the number you can operate. You cannot, it's going to be hard to increase the unit number. And also you want to see there's no violation or anything like that, Yeah.
I'm looking at that center photo. It says number of units, and I notice all of the trailers have nice little grass areas around them. Is that something that each tenant has to mow their own grass, or would it be part of the included rent?
Okay, this is not even real world park. A real world park don't look like this. Because it has a street, curb street. Most parks you find is not gonna be like this. Yeah. So as far as the long maintenance, usually the park is in charge of the common area. Usually the tenant are supposed to take care of their surrounding area for the lawn. But you're not gonna, for a park like this, you're gonna pay premium. It's gonna cost you, which is you don't want, because what you want is the return. It's not the look. Yeah. So the next we're gonna look at is environmental. We talked about earlier. Phase 1, mass pass phase 1, the cost and the turnaround time, and also utilities. We talk about, right? Septic tank. So so every time when we purchase, we also get people to check the septic tank. So for the Florida one, I paid the guy I think like $1,500 or $200 or $3,000. I think $3,000 because it has I think 15 septic tanks. So I had him check every tank, and I had him pump out the tanks that are full. So the tanks, once it's pumped out, then it's gonna last for many years, at least I think 3 to 5 years. Once you pump it up. So because the reason you want to check the tanks are working correctly is because, let's say if the tank is out of function and if you need to replace it, it's kind of expensive. It's gonna cost you probably at least minimum 15 to 20 grand each. Yeah. So that's why I checked the tanks. That's why I paid the guy I think $3,000 to check all the septic tanks. And water, for the water, you wanna check there's government agency that regulate this, so they're gonna have reports, to say if you pass the water test or not. And also for the road, there's a park that I shared with you earlier. I was going to buy in Houston. I didn't buy it. It's because the park has a huge piece of land, which is 12 acres. But the land was really, the road was really beat up. It's got a whole bunch of holes everywhere, like potholes everywhere. So I got a contractor to do a quote for me. He said it's going to cost me $300,000 to repair the road. So that's the reason I didn't buy that park. But now comes to think of it, I should have bought it because the price is cheap. But it's just something you gotta look into to see what kind of decision you want to make.
Ray, have you bought any parks and then resold them yet, or?
So that's the thing. I don't want to sell it. I'm not a flipper. I'm buying a whole guy. So the way to do it is I can buy it. For example, the Florida park, I buy it once I fill out the spaces and raise the rent. Couple years, 2 or 3 years down the road, I can pull out money to use it as down payment to buy other parks. So you don't have to sell it. You can just finance and get the money out.
So how many actually do you own now?
Well, like I shared with Kevin earlier, I tried to purchase the park for a little bit over a year. So this is actually the first park I bought. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got it.
But I have a lot of real estate transaction experience because I got my license in 1999, so I have been real estate brokerage mostly. I did like over a couple hundred deals, but it's mostly for transaction based. Yeah.
Yeah. No, this sounds like a good area. It really does.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So they usually say the hardest thing is the first deal. So literally, if you just able to complete one deal from the beginning to end, that's all you need to know. Then pretty much you just done one deal, you're gonna be pretty much the expert already. I'm not saying you're gonna be perfect and know everything, but once you complete your first deal, then the next deal is gonna be easy walk. But the hardest, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Have you found that a local community credit union or a bank in the local area would be more likely to land on a deal like this, or would you be better off forming a relationship in your own community with a national lender?
Okay, yeah, so that's a good question. So what you're saying is correct. So it's generally easier to get a local bank to finance you. Because, for example, a couple weeks later, I'm gonna go to my park in Florida. One of the reasons I'm going there is I'm gonna talk with the bank. I have a relationship now, so I'm gonna see how to get a refinance with that park, because my tenant, they're already depositing money over there in the bank, in that local bank. It's called People South Bank. It's a local Midwestern bank. They have like I think around 20 branches in the area, in the southeast, states. Yeah. And there's another option you can do is obviously, we talked about earlier, seller financing. Another option is there are actually banks that focus on that's willing to loan to mobile home park investors. And also remember I told you, remember I shared with you, I got a bridge loan. The bridge loan, they actually willing to finance me too. So they said next time, anytime you get another purchase, I just need 30% down payment. Then I can finance you for 5%. The company that gave me the bridge loan. Go ahead, Rich. You had a question?
I was going to say I've done out-of-state deals and usually use a loan broker, because they can find cost of point or something.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So the loan broker is good too. Yeah, because when you get a loan broker, they source the best deal for you. The premium you pay them is worth it. Whatever you pay them is worth it. Yeah, because you don't have to go one by one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, let me see who has a question. Okay, Kevin. Okay, you okay. All right, I see your information. Okay, good. Okay, so anything else you guys wanna? Okay, yeah. So park on the homes, we talked about that. So basically, let's say if you buy a park, and let's say if it's 100 unit, if it's 100, all the homes are park home, then you might want to think about it, because it's very hard to convert 100 homes to tenant-owned homes. And in the process while you're doing that, it's gonna your maintenance cost is gonna be very high. So for example, let's say if there's both parks at 100 units, if the price is similar or even a little bit higher, let's say if one park has only 30 park-owned homes, another park is 90 park-owned homes, I would pick the one that has 30 park-owned homes, even if I had to pay maybe $100,000 more, because my maintenance cost would be much lower, because I don't have to repair the homes. I mean, I do, but just I only have to repair 30 homes. Yeah.
And your model is to convert those over time to non-park owned homes.
Yes. So that's what I'm doing right now for one of the tenants. So I have one tenant. She's living in a home that's 2-bedroom. She owns that home. So I have another home that's 3 bedrooms. So right now she's selling her home and buying one of my other homes. That's 3 bedrooms.
Right, because you can do that too. If you have a park-owned home, you can sell it.
Yes.
Right.
So for the park-owned homes, I mean, obviously, if I can sell for higher price, I would want to do it. But that's not even my main focus. My main focus is to get them to own the home. Another reason you want the tenants own homes is because if the home is tenant owned, they're gonna be a much more loyal tenants. They're gonna stay there for the much long term, and they are going to keep the area nice.
Do you ever do rent to own?
Yeah, rent to own, correct. Yeah. So for the rent to own, what you want to do for the rent to own is you do not want to charge any interest, because I think as soon as you charge interest, then it gets some type of a federal or state law involved. So you just finance them with 0 interest. That way, that way they own the home. I mean, they don't own the home yet, but at least they have this entitlement mentality that they are the owner. Then they are much likely to keep the home well. I mean, they're much likely to maintain the home. They're much likely to be more, responsible for the home, and also so it's you want to instill that sense of ownership, because if people think that it's their home, everything's gonna be so much easier. Yeah. So value calculation, we're just gonna go through quickly. So the easiest formula for you to calculate if the deal is good deal or not, it's you times the number of occupied space. Okay, remember, it's occupied space. It's not the total space. Let's say if you're looking at a park that's 110 units, but out of the 110 units, only 100 units are leased. You only want to calculate the unit that are leased. You do not want to calculate the empty spaces. Okay, so it's the number of occupied spaces times the average rent times 70%. Remember I shared with you guys earlier that the average accepted expense ratio is 30%, right? That's why we say 70%, right? Because 70% minus 30%, right? And 100% minus 30% is 70%. So 30% would be your, expense ratio. So for example, a park, if it has 110 spaces with 10 vacancies and monthly space of $300. So here's a real life example. So this is the value calculation, right? So 100 units, because 10 of the units is empty, so you don't calculate that, right? And times 300, that's the monthly rent, and times 70%, right? So that means this value of this park is worth $2.1 million. So this is a way for me to know from the get-go how much money I'm gonna make and how much price I should pay, right? That's why when I was negotiating on the park that I bought in Florida, I know in my mind, if I can get it for $600,000, it's a really good deal. Because if I use this formula to calculate, the park is gonna be worth, at least $1.6 million, right? So if it's $1.6 million, if I paid $600,000, that means I'm looking at to make $1 million from that purchase. So you want to, in the beginning, you want to start with the end in mind. You want to know when times comes to it, how much you're gonna make. But it doesn't mean you're gonna sell it. It could be, let's say, if you're gonna refinance 5 years down the road, how much is the value is gonna be. So you want to start with the end in mind. You want to know how much it's gonna be worth. After you fill up those empty spaces, after you increase rent $20 a year. So that's the beauty of commercial real estate. Like Kevin, you were saying earlier, I have been doing single family homes before, so I think I want to transition into commercial real estate. The biggest difference between single family and commercial real estate is, obviously, if you invest in single family, you get the huge appreciation if you get it in the right time. But the problem with single family is that the value of single family is determined by the market, is determined by your neighbor. Let's say if your neighbor's home sold for $1 million, that's how much his home is worth. But for commercial real estate, the value is determined by the income. It's not determined by the market value. It's not determined by how much the neighbor sold for. Let's say if I bought a park, if I'm charging $300 a month right now, so let's say if it's worth $1 million, let's say 5 years down the road, my rent becomes $600, then my park is going to be worth $2 million because I doubled my rental income.
Ray, can you explain why did you multiply it by 70? That's the expense rate.
We multiply by 70. Remember, we said earlier the average accepted expense ratio for mobile home park is 30%.
Right.
Right. So if it's 100%, if you subtract 30%, then that's why we don't time it by 100 because there are expenses, right? That's why we time it by 70 because 30% is the expenses.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Right. So because if you time it by 100, that's the total is going to be $3 million, but it's not $3 million because you still you haven't factored in the expenses yet, right? But when you factor in the 30% expenses, then it's going to be 2.1 million.
Okay.
Because what we're doing right now, we just calculating the multiple, right? The multiples. Yeah. Okay, cap rate. So maybe once we go over this, then you're gonna have a much better idea. So remember, so so what we're covering right now is a way for you to figure out quickly what you should pay for the park, for the deal. Okay, so the last formula we used, this is a quick way to figure it out. Okay, then if you need to look it into a little bit more, then there's two other ways to figure out. One is cap rate. So when you look at the cap rate, is net operating income divided by the price, you get the cap rate. Okay, the net operating income is total rent subtract expenses, but you do not want to subtract mortgage interest and the depreciation and amortization. You don't want to subtract that. You just basically subtract your operating expenses. Let's say if your rent is 100,000 and your expenses is 30,000, then your net operating income will be 70 grand, right? So 70 grand, let's say if you sold the park for 700,000, then the cap rate would be 10%. But you do not want to do that because when you're the seller, you want the cap rate to be as low as possible. When you're the buyer, you want the cap rate to be high as possible. So if you're the seller, you want the cap rate to be 5%. So if the cap rate is 5%, let's say, same example. Let's say if your net income is 770,000, if you sell the park for 1.4 million, then the cap rate would be 5%, right? Let's say if your net operating income is 70,000, if you sell the park at 700,000, then the cap rate would be 10%. That's what the buyer wants. You know, when you're the buyer, you want the second scenario. You want the 10%. When you're the seller, you want the first scenario. You want the 5%.
How do you make a level decision regarding cap rates and just say average like stock market returns? If the market's historically performed 7% returns over, the 50 years,
Okay.
how do you say, well, I'm pulling a 5 or 6% cap rate?
Okay.
But
this map would answer your question. So this is the average cap rate people are paying around the country. So if you're buying something at 10 cap, that's really, really good because it's much higher than the average in the country. Right now, the average, if you're getting something from the market, the cap rate where you're gonna get the most is probably 6%, 77%. That's it. That's why I know the one I bought is a good deal because I bought it at 13%. That's twice of the average. What the average buyers are paying in the country.
Yeah, that's really great. 13%.
Yeah. So because every area there is for example, in California, I don't even think you can get 4.58 because this map is probably old map. Now in California, the cap rate you're gonna get is probably 3%. Okay, let's go a little bit deeper. What does a 3% cap rate mean? A 3% cap rate means it's gonna take you 30 years to get your money back, right? A 20% cap rate means it's gonna get you 5 years to get your money back. A 30% cap rate means it's gonna take you 3 years to get your money back, right? A 30% cap rate means a 3% cap rate means it's gonna get you it's gonna take you 30 years to get the money back. It's just the speed at how soon you can get your investment back.
I mean, the reason you get the low cap rates in places like California is because you get land appreciation kind of to offset it over time.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So if you're looking for appreciation, then you gotta buy in the right timing. So yeah, you're right. So it's either you're looking for appreciation or you're looking for cash flow. At 3%, you have the cash flow is just very little. There's literally no cash flow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another way you want to look at it to calculate. So what we're going. So we went through the simple formula. Then we went through the cap rate calculation. Then now we're going to look at the cash on cash. So these are the three ways that you can use to determine whether it's a good deal or not. Okay. So cash on cash only works on financed properties. That's why when you want to finance it. Because if you don't finance, then the cash on cash return is going to be very shitty because you don't have any leverage, right? But if you're financing, then the cash on cash then is very good because that means you're getting more return with the least money invested, right? For example, to calculate cash on cash is not net operating income minus debt minus loan mortgage, and then divided by the down payment. So let's look at a real example. Okay. So this example, okay. So let's say the monthly rent is 1,800, expense is 600, so the net operating income is 1,200. The mortgage payment is 900, the net monthly income is 300. So 300 times 12, that's 3,600, right? So that's the income. With the cap rate, we didn't subtract the mortgage. With the cap rate, we just subtract the expenses. But when you calculate cash on cash, you need to subtract expenses and you need to subtract mortgage expenses. So once you subtract all that, so in this scenario, is you times 12 is $3,600 a year. So if the annual income subtract expense, subtract mortgage payment is 3,600. If you are putting $60,000 down as a down payment to buy this property, then in this case, your cash on cash return is 6%.
So if you own it free and clear, you would substitute, what would you do? You would say,
So that's the same. If you own it free and clear, that's what you do not want. Because when you own it free and clear, that means your money is not working for you. Right? Another way to look at it is you want your money to be a little foot soldier, right? They go out there every day. Doesn't matter if you're sleeping or if you're eating, if you're dating, your money is still making money for you. So that's why if you can, you always want to have some type of leverage. You know, you can put the money out and go buy something else, then you can get higher cash on cash and you can get higher cap rate, you can get more income. So the three ways to look at it, one is the simple formula, which is number of occupied rent. So we're going to recap. The first way to look at it is this model. It's very easy. So you basically just times the occupied rent. Remember, it's got to be, you can only calculate the rent that's leased. You cannot calculate the spot that's not leased. Okay. So the leased spot times the average rent times 70%. That's a quick way to figure out whether it's a good deal or not. Another way to do it is look at a cap rate, right? For the cap rate, you do not minus the loan payment. You only minus the expenses with the total rent. And then you divide that by the price that you're going to buy, and then you're going to get a cap rate. For the seller, you want the cap rate to be higher as possible. If you're the seller, you want the cap rate to be as low as possible. If you're the buyer, you want the cap rate to be high as possible, right? And another way to look at it is the cash on cash. The cash on cash is a net operating income subtract the loan payment. Then you times 12. Then you get a yearly net income after you pay off the factoring the expense for the loan. Then you divide that by the down payment you put, then you can get the cash on cash. So for cash on cash, I think the minimum you want is no less than 6. If it's less than 6, then it's not considered a good deal. Obviously, so it's opposite. So yeah, it's the same. So when you're a buyer, you want the cap rate to be as high as possible. You want the cash on cash return to be as high as possible. So the spread we talked about earlier, you know, if you're so you want a big spread, right? So this situation, if you get 10% interest rate, if your cap rate is only 7%, then you're negative. You don't want that, right? You want a positive. Let's say if your interest rate is 7%, and if your cap rate is 10%, then you have a positive. The bigger the spread, the better, right? Yeah. Any other questions, guys? Wow, we did it for like almost 2 hours, 1 hour 45 minutes.
That was great.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. It's quite informative.
Yeah, so here's the thing. There's one guy, I don't know if you guys know, his name is I forgot his name. So this one guy, he's always shouting on YouTube, and he was telling that everybody's stupid, but he has, I mean, he's kind of like a foul mouse, but there's one point he makes is very good, is that you want to get into equity. You want to get the deal. The easiest way is to get the deal is just call. But I know some people don't like to call. That's why I said you could either call or you could either mail the postcard or letters. So basically, the easiest way to get equity is just to hustle. You know, it just that depends on how you hustle. So you could either talk to people, network, or mail letters. So if if you could get into some equity as soon as possible, as quickly as possible. So the more equity you get into, the more money, it's easier to make the money. Yeah.
Yeah, I would be interested in partnering maybe with somebody or with you. And I mean, I'm not as interested in like a syndication, just putting money in and being a silent partner. I want to do it hands-on.
Yeah.
Something like that would be really interesting if something comes.
There are many different options. So the syndication is for somebody that's they don't want to get involved, they're a little bit passive. So for partnership is for somebody that wants to also get involved. So there's many different ways to do it. There's syndication, there's partnership, there's wholesaling, there's brokeraging. So yeah, it's depending on. So I guess the bottom line of this how the partnership is, which way to partnership is depending on how good the deal is. So let's say if the deal is super good. So for example, from my perspective, right? So if I'm a broker, then if I'm a broker, whether the deal is or not, it's not my problem. It's just whatever the client want. If they want it, then we just broker and then we get a commission. So whether it's a good deal or not, we don't really get involved. But if we're doing syndication, then if the deal is not good, I would not even do it. Because literally, if I'm doing the syndication, if I'm the operating partner, that means I'm going to get equity from the deal. And that means I will not waste my time if I don't think I can make money from the equity. What I mean is by that, the deal has to be good. Because if the deal is not good, even if I get equity, I'm not going to be able to get a good return. Right? For example, let's say if I buy the property for $1 million, if I know in my mind, a couple years down the road, I can turn this deal into $2 million, $3 million, then I will be very incentivized to do the deal as a syndication deal, because I know I'm going to be putting my time in, but I also know that I can get a good return because I have equity in it too, right?
Well, also, I've never seen a syndication deal on one of these, but the syndication deals I see on multifamily, there's always an exit strategy and a timeline, which isn't really what you're looking for anyway.
Well, that's just a preference. That's just depending on. So that's why the match is very important. What I mean by that is that the goal that the syndicator has versus the investor has to match, right? So you wanna syndicate with somebody that has the same goal. For example, let's say if both of you want to exit to sell, then you need to find somebody that also have the same goal that wants to sell. If both of you do not want to sell, you just want to keep holding on refinance, then you want to partnership with syndicate with somebody that doesn't want to sell, that just want to continue refinance. Yeah. You guys have any other questions?
Very informative. Thank you, Ray. I got a lot out of it.
Thank you guys for coming online. So yeah, so that's about it. So we're almost 11:50 into the session. So yeah, so I don't know. Maybe next time we can. I was thinking, because today actually we actually covered a lot. I mean, if you just, I'm gonna upload this on YouTube. If you just if you can revisit this session, I mean, that's pretty much all you need to get started. It's pretty much all the basic information is in here. If you really get it, then you can you get a deal done just with all the information in this session. Yeah.
Well, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you. So we'll definitely keep in contact because we're also in the meetup group. So if there's any update, I'll let you guys know.
Okay.
Okay.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Bye.